I would like to combine in this video some of my old materials, namely on money and currency and on pervasive abstract ideas in human society. I'll try to combine my previous conclusions in order to reach some sort of synthesis. Firstly, on the matter of what money is, money characteristics and main functions, as well as the distinction between money and currency, I have already made 2 videos. Briefly, there I contend that trade, this pillar of human economic activity, is essentially a barter of utility. But barter, with its natural limitations, needed to be replaced by a third, somewhat universally agreed upon commodity as a medium of exchange. I have already explained that precious metals have all the advantages of this suitable third commodity as a medium of exchange. I also explained why other commodities such as foodstuff, art, spices or diamonds are not. Secondly, I have explained how and why the abstract ideas which serve as justification for hierarchical society evolved to what we know nowadays as elected government system, and how irrelevant your voting rights are as far as the rules running your daily lives are concerned. And I want to return to this second point and elaborate on it. To begin with, early human agricultural societies were local, hence even the abstract ideas of elites and rulers had to keep touch with reality, with the physical surroundings, or else your village would be populated with ravaging schizophrenics because of the cognitive dissonance the system would create. They would be subjected to discrepancy between what they are told and what they observe. Well, throughout human history, this dystopian scenario turns into a reality from time to time. Let's not forget the medieval god obsession and the witch hunts and the burning of innocent women at stakes, or the Mesoamerica's mass human sacrifices. But anyhow, as far as the economic activity was concerned, even when the currency of exchange was created centrally, say by the Royal Mint, it was based on the universally accepted and very tangible commodity, the precious metals. The claim checks on them, which now we call banknotes, were supposedly fully redeemable in precious metals because partial banking reserve was not supposed to be legal. And where these claim checks weren't redeemable, economic troubles ensued, and you can check the inflation in the late Roman Empire, for example. But the fact is that, like anything else, it was easy to impose as money what was already traditionally accepted and used. Traditions go a long way in human society, and they are like inertia in physics. As I have commented in my older videos, the source of common law is the word of the king. And I'll return to kings and queens and emperors later on. Moving forward to the Age of Enlightenment and Jean-Jacques Rousseau, it was the implied abstract social contract, which nobody signed, that served to legitimize the equally abstract government. In a sense, the social contract was an attempt to rationalize the already existing irrational structure of the society. I would call it successful, as it goes on to this day unquestioned. In essence, the social contract is the voluntary surrender of human liberty and economic output, which to a great extent is one and the same, by the way. In exchange, the population at large is guaranteed certain personal protection and security. Now, as a subparagraph to this social contract, in my view, are the legal tender laws. I would love to have handy Jim Rickards' book, The Debt of Money, to eloquently quote his definition of the contractual theory of money, but essentially it boils down to express government grab through power of monopoly on issuance of claim checks over goods and services. Any attempts to compete with government monopoly is faced with violence. Government, it goes without saying, it retains monopoly over violence as well. However, in exchange for its monopoly to print money, it guarantees that the claim check it issues, say the dollar bill, is equal to a certain weight in gold. Historically, and according to the United States Constitution, it was supposed to be redeemable in gold at a fixed proportion. In other words, only a fixed amount of dollars strictly corresponding to the existing gold reserve could be issued. I don't need to tell you that, expressed in simple manner, the social contract has been broken unilaterally long ago. The exchange of the products of your economic activity, your freedom, against security, and let's call it social security, but please understand that this is your physical security, your old age security, your health care. So this security is implied to be exchanged voluntarily against surrender of freedoms in modern times. And we all know that it is not, but the penalties for non-compliance are severe. And since government, as I already said, retains monopoly over violence, the trespassers have no defense. They are vilified as dangerous aberrations, a threat to the civilization, and their refusal to surrender the product of their labor to central authorities is punished more severely than, say, vehicular manslaughter. The salient feature of the centrally imposed medium of exchange is the fact that allocation of the human economic output is surrendered to the central authority, which is not even national since at least the end of the Second World War and the implementation of the Bretton Woods Accord. Confiscation and reallocation of the products of your labor is non-transparent, often arbitrary, and you have no direct control over it whatsoever. The pretense is that should you become dissatisfied by this reallocation of the confiscated products of your labor, you could enforce change of direction by casting your vote. That's of course a foolish notion because you live in democracy. Broken down to individual opinions, you could vote for more meatballs against somebody who wants more carrots. Contrary to what you've been fist-fed, your individual vote is meaningless. It doesn't exist without pooling it along with many other votes, hence political parties must be formed. With the time, you either vote for one party or the other. As I said in my previous video, yin and yang. Or, when it comes to allocation of your economic output, direct or through channeling via manipulation of the interest rates, Democrats or Republicans are on the same page as far as the majority of the public spending is concerned. How many times did they rotate since Kennedy, and yet Cuban embargo remains? How many times did they rotate since Desert Storm or since Afghanistan intervention? They may run on superficially divisive issues such as, say, gay marriage, drugs, abortions, seat belts in cars and so on, which do not really require legislation if you think about it. But when it comes to scary, abstract or spectacular threats, they are on the same page. The Soviet empire of evil will conquer the world. There are these complex laboratories in the Middle East cages. Places you can't find on the map where weapons of mass destruction are created. These foreigners kidnap commercial flights and smash them into buildings. Or, as the theme of the day goes, there is this microscopic threat that you can't see, but it will wipe out humanity. When one humongous abstract threat is exhausted, another one appears. Next one would be cosmic, I tell you. Meteors or even better, aliens. The threat must be simultaneously external and internal. It is beyond me as to why humans keep on casting their votes, thus unilaterally supporting a contract that has been unilaterally broken by the other side, if they purport that they support their legal human rights. Based on what I just said, the possible alternative action humans could take are, for example, enforcing the social contract by converting their claim checks into tangible money. However, this would require a mass organization, a grassroots movement of a sort, and these rarely or never occur. As George Orwell puts it, left on their own, pros would never revolt. And individual acts of protest go unnoticed. How many of you read Gulag Archipelago? Perhaps more than few. And how many of you heard of Erwin Schiff? I guess nobody. Likely, individual acts of protest will have similar endings. And now, I would like to answer a couple of objections that may occur. Say, for example, what do I care about dollar excessive printing? We use another currency in my country, and it is my government that I vote in power. We have more than 2 political parties and so on. But, do I really need to address that? Have you tried to sell oil in currency other than the US dollar? Well, Saddam Hussein tried, and so did Muammar Gaddafi. The biggest, by far, financial, debt and commodities markets are all denominated in US dollars. In addition, you may have heard of the International Monetary Fund and its basket of currencies. I've touched upon it in previous videos. I spoke about its creation and the quotas, partially in gold, each member state had to contribute. And here comes the second point I want to make. You can Google following information. The International Monetary Fund came into formal existence in 1945 following the Bretton Woods Conference held the year before. Along with its sister organization, the World Bank, it was created to prevent economic crises such as the Great Depression. It is a specialized agency of the United Nations. The IMF is responsible for the creation and maintenance of the international monetary system, the system by which international payments among countries take place. It provides a systematic mechanism for foreign exchange transactions in order to foster investment and promote balanced global economic trade. To achieve these goals, the IMF focuses and advises on the macroeconomic policies of a country, which impacts its exchange rate, governmental budget, money and credit management. The IMF will also appraise a country's financial sector and regulatory policies, as well as structural policies within the microeconomy that relate to the labor market and employment. End unquote. Now you realize how independent your government is. We, who come from the third world, are well aware that IMF does not advise but dictates all of the above to the savage little countries who happen not to have nuclear weapons. How does the IMF work? The IMF is funded by quota subscriptions paid by member states. The size of each quota is determined by the size of each member's economy. The quota in turn determines the weight each country has within the IMF, and hence its voting rights, as well as how much financing it can receive from the IMF. 25% of each country's quota is paid in the form of special drawing rights, SDRs, which are a claim on the freely usable currencies of the IMF members. Before SDRs, the Bretton Woods system had been based on a fixed exchange rate, and it was feared that there would not be enough reserves to finance global economic growth. Therefore, in 1969, the IMF created the SDRs, which are a kind of international reserve asset. They were created to supplement the international reserves of the time, which were gold and the US dollar, of course, based on gold. So you see, the fictional non-existent, not covered by anything SDR replaced the gold, which was deemed to be insufficient back then in 1969. Mind you, in 1971, USA defaulted, or as the euphemism goes, Nixon closed the gold window, thus making the dollar not redeemable in gold. But the scenery was already prepared for that in 1969. The value of SDRs lie in the fact that member states commit to honor their obligations to use and accept SDRs. Now, if I am Russia, I would think it harder for you to make me honor my obligations. But if I am Greece, we read further. The SDR is not a currency. It is a unit of account by which member states can exchange with one another in order to settle international accounts. The SDRs can also be used in exchange for other freely traded currencies of IMF members. A country may do this when it has a deficit and needs more foreign currency to pay its international obligations. Unquote. In other words, no matter of the fact that Greek voters elected Tsipras due to the fact that he insisted to jump out of the floating basket of currencies, or to put it simply, default, the decision-making power of the distribution of the products of Greek citizens' labor, of their country's natural resources and treasures, was not in their hands. Can Greece default? No. This is not a decision the so-called sovereign state of Greece can make. And this is the second objection I want to abolish. Do you know who Kristalina Georgieva is? And by the way, this is the correct Bulgarian pronunciation for Mario Eneko and others who try to spell her name. Did you vote her in charge of your country's economic policies? But what is the purpose of all this, of this system? Let's go back to kings. As I said in previous videos, the wealth of the kings was the land. To this day, real estate remains royal, and you remain a simple custodian of the real estate. You have no real title to the land. You legally remain a chattel, a feudal property. Ultimately, should you stop donating part of the products of your labor, you would be evicted. Kings traditionally fought wars over land to conquer more or protect what they already had, and nothing changed. Everything else is a masquerade. I will bore you with more details on that with my next video. Thank you for watching.